Good Sunday morning and welcome to Inside Tennessee. I'm your moderator, John Becker. With us this morning, my colleague John North with WBIR, investigative journalist, and also our panel, the regulators, Don Bosch, who is a Democrat, runs his own law firm. Susan Richardson Williams runs her own PR firm, and she is a Republican. We're here to break down what was the election of Thursday, and let's start with just some high-level takeaways, and we'll dive into specific races in a moment. Don Bosch, what's your takeaway specifically in Knox County?
The Democrats have made great strides and great progress over the last 4 years in both fielding quality candidates and making races competitive. They didn't win that many in the county. They did win some that historically they do not, but they're getting much closer. Evidence, Glenn Jacobs 4 years ago beat the relatively unknown Democrat by, I think, 21 points last night, earlier in the week. He beats a Democrat, again, known to the party, but not further outside, by less than 10. The Democrats have done a good job. Matt Shears, as party head, done a great job. The county is trending. It's not there yet, but it's trending blue, and maybe in a few years we'll be competitive in a lot more races.
Susan, your high-level take.
Well, I would agree with Don on when you look at the numbers from the Republicans and the Democrats, he's right about Glenn Jacobs, 66% 4 years ago, 55% earlier this week. And I think the fact that the Democrats party is now, they're running candidates for contesting almost every seat, and did win one and came close in several others. So I think it's a wake-up call to the Republican Party in Knox County. You got to get back to the basics, get reorganizing along your precinct lines, and you just got to get back and do some homework.
We'll do some more high-level talk a little later on in the broadcast. But, John, I want to start with the Tennessee House of Representatives, District 18. This is Eddie Manis's seat. He decided, I'm not going to run for another 2-year term. So in this primary, 2 Republicans wanted his job. That is Elaine Davis and Janet Testerman. And you see the results there. 56 to 44 and the vote totals. I also want to, John, as we kick off this discussion, say I'm looking at the numbers here, and Elaine Davis won both the early and election day votes as well as we start the discussion. Janet Testerman did win the absentee. What do you make of the results?
A lot bigger split than I would have guessed. I would never have dreamed it would be that wide. And I actually probably sort of thought, I assumed wrongly, that the traditional Republican, if you will, kind of the old guard Republican, that being Testerman, would win. Wrong. Elaine Davis, who has been a panelist on here, ended up being the winner. She's
been a panelist, also a former Democrat. Janet Testerman, as you mentioned, her father was in politics, mayor at one point. Also, she's CEO of Young Williams Animal Center. She's on city council now. Susan, what made the difference in that race?
I think one of the differences is that Elaine got out early. If you'll recall, she was going to run against Eddie Manis. And before he announced he decided not to run. But Elaine was out there pretty early, and she worked very hard, knocking on doors, and that's a district. This was Stacey Campfield, Martin Daniels' district before Eddie Manis. And that is a district that's used to having people coming by, knocking on our doors, introducing themselves. Elaine did a great job at that, but I think the real key was she was out there early, and Janet got in it the day before filing deadline. And to me, that's one of the biggest differences. Janet had a lot more money than Elaine, but money doesn't always matter if you work hard.
We're going to see that in another race we're going to look at. Don, any closing thoughts before we move on to another race?
Well, I note the dichotomy of having a very moderate Republican preceding Elaine Davis, should she win the general, and Eddie Manis there, and now Elaine, who tacks to the hard right, frankly, certainly in relation to Janet Testerman, won this race pretty handily. So that's a bit of a schizophrenic district right now, in my opinion. It'll be interesting to see what happens down the road over the next cycles of elections.
Let's go to District 4 in a school board race. And why do school boards matter? Well, because they control a lot of money. In Knox County, they control $6 out of every $10 that are spent. it's an enormous sum that goes to them, and they have line item control. So let's look at District 4, and here we have the Democrat coming out on top. Catherine Bike, who is in the legal profession, she's not a lawyer. Will Edwards is a lawyer and was a big money candidate. John, as I set you up for this, I just want to note that Bike won the early vote, and she also won Election Day, only she won Election Day by 7 votes. It's one of those races where we say, your vote matters. This one's true.
Absolutely matters. This was the most fun race to watch last night for me, because you would have early vote numbers come in, and then you would have like a small percentage, and then it would build a little bit, and the lead, at least as the numbers were coming in, kept changing. So it was a lot of fun to watch this one. This is a very interesting district. It is, as we said last few days ago on election night, it's a very purple district. I was not surprised to see that she won this. I think this was the most partisan race that we saw amongst the school board races for sure.
Don Bosch, let's start with you. You're the Democrat, but I want to start with money, because Will Edwards had well more than $100,000 in his war chest. Susan pointed out that typically in a school board race you might see $25,000 spent. Cat Bike spending upwards of $30,000, or at least raising that much. So she spent maybe $5 a vote. He spent maybe $20 a vote just in a baseline. What's your take, Bosch?
Well, I know Kat, and she's been a friend for a while. There probably wasn't a candidate running in Knox County that worked harder at knocking on doors. And I'm telling you, knocking on a door is worth more than $1. And she knocked on, maybe close to 10,000 doors during this race. And she got around. People got to know her. She's very likable. She's approachable. She had a very clear message and platform. I'm not surprised she won. I'm not surprised it was close. I'm happy for my friend, and I think she'll serve the school board well.
Susan?
Yeah, Will Edwards, there's no question, he was backed by the financial Republicans, what I would call the traditional financial Republicans in the county. I think he raised maybe over $100,000, which is really incredible for a school board race. I can't tell you what Will did as far as his strategy. Did he get out and knock on doors? I know he spent a lot of money, had a lot of mailers, but that one was a little bit of a surprise, I think. I think Don and I had talked about this before. We both felt it would be close, but I felt like in the final analysis, with the money and the support Will had, he would win. So this was a little bit of a surprise.
Another quick take before we leave in this first block. District 9, why do we care about that? Well, Christy Christie's the board chair, and she really squeaked this one out, John. For a while, it was, again, one of those tight races.
The early release of numbers, I'm sure some people in South Knoxville gasped at it because
she was down.
She was down. Annabelle Henley had a lead, and that did right itself, I guess. If you're from Christy Christie's perspective, you would say that, and sort of went back to what expectations were, but initially it didn't look that way.
Don?
Yeah, I mean, this one surprised me a little bit. But Chris Christie, she's got a lot of detractors, and so it got to be a pretty contentious race. For the school board chair to win by 240 votes, with a Democrat, with it now being partisan, that's a pretty strong message that there are some people not happy with her and wanting change. So it'll be interesting to see how she recovers from a close race. She's there, and she's going to be there for a while. So. We'll sort of see what happens at this point, but I was a little surprised at how close this was.
We'll dive into that partisan question, but Susan, any take on this race in particular before we move on?
No, I think we talked, on election night, and we talked about when Christy Christie was behind, and we were all shocked about that, her being the chairman. But she did come back, and she won. So, that's what matters right now. She's got 4 years to serve.
It's a win to win in this book. All right, we're going to take a quick break on Inside Tennessee. Back with more of our election night breakdown when we come back on Inside Tennessee.